The stars above Kythera Prime shimmered gently, as if unaware of the violence approaching. It was a beautiful world, calm and green, wrapped in layers of defense and pride. The Galdran Alliance ruled this part of the galaxy with iron claws. Their fleets were massive, their armies feared, and their arrogance even greater. For years they had watched humanity grow in a quiet corner of space, and they had laughed. To them, humans were nothing more than clever apes, talkative, emotional, and unworthy of respect. When Earth sent a warning, a simple message telling the Galdrans not to cross the Centauri line, they treated it as a joke. The message was clear: do not enter human space. Beyond this line, we offer no safety, no mercy, only fire. But the Galdrans didn't believe it. Why should they fear humans? They had conquered 100 species and crushed dozens of rebellions. So without care or caution, they sent 12 massive dreadnoughts across the line. They entered human space like hunters marching into a forest full of prey. The first target was Colony Theta 9, a small mining outpost with no weapons and no soldiers. In under an hour, it was gone. Every miner, engineer, and family was turned to ash. The Galdran fleet didn't stop to explain. They left only silence behind. Back on Earth, no angry words were spoken. No message was sent back. No threat. Just quiet. 2 days passed. Then, above Kythera Prime, a single ship appeared. It came from a rift in space, smooth, black, and silent. It didn't show a flag. It didn't broadcast a warning. It drifted forward, slow and steady. Galdran defense teams watched it, confused. Was it a probe? A scout? A message of peace? Before they could decide, the ship opened fire. A single beam of light, white-hot and crackling, cut through Kythera's outer defense platform, splitting it in two. Then came the missiles, wave after wave, precise and brutal. In less than 10 minutes, 3 Galdran cruisers were burning in orbit, and panic spread across the command center. This wasn't a mistake. This was war. The ship, later identified as Requital, a Terran war cruiser, moved like nothing the Galdrans had seen before. It danced through space using short-range jumps and AI-guided weapons. Their strongest shields failed. Their best fighters were destroyed before even locking onto a target. No response came from Earth. No message, no voice. Just silence, again. But in that silence, something dark began to rise across the stars. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Galdrans had been attacked at home. And the attacker wasn't a lost empire or an ancient enemy. It was the one species they thought beneath them. Now, fires burned across the sky of Kythera Prime, and the stars above no longer felt safe. A single human warship had come through the line. The first, but far from the last. The warning had been ignored, and now nothing could stop what was coming. Captain Elena Vasquez stood firm on the bridge of the HSS Requital, her gaze steady as the stars streaked by outside the ship's massive windows. The weight of command rested heavily on her shoulders, but her voice was calm and sure as she spoke. To her crew. They were the first wave of a fleet that had waited in the shadows for too long. For years, humanity had hidden its true strength, growing stronger and more united after centuries of hardship and war. Now, that strength was being unleashed. Behind the Requital, the 12th Terran fleet emerged from a shimmering tear in space, hundreds of warships shining like sharp blades ready to cut through enemy lines. Their engines roared with power and purpose, a symbol that humanity was no longer the weak species the Galdrans once mocked. When the fleet appeared in orbit over Kythera Prime, the Galdran defenses were caught off guard. The giant guns and shield grids that once seemed so impenetrable barely held for minutes against the relentless assault. The Requital led the attack, its plasma cannons slicing through the massive enemy dreadnoughts with deadly precision. One by one, the Galdran ships exploded in fiery bursts, their crews thrown into chaos. On the bridge, Elena's voice rang clear, urging her crew to push harder. The battle was fierce and brutal, but humanity fought with a fury and skill no one expected. The Galdrans, once so confident, sent frantic calls for reinforcements. But the Terran fleet was already spreading out, hitting every Galdran stronghold, from the outer colonies to the inner systems. The war was no longer confined to Cathera Prime. It was everywhere. In the cold void of space, small groups of Terran fighters darted like fireflies, outmaneuvering the heavier Galdran ships and tearing them apart with rapid-fire lasers. Larger Terran cruisers rammed and grappled with enemy vessels, sacrificing themselves to create openings for the fleet to advance. The AI systems controlling the human ships worked flawlessly, predicting enemy moves and coordinating attacks with perfect timing. Every strike was a message. Humanity was no longer a threat to be ignored or crushed. They were the storm coming for the Galdran Empire. The Alliance commanders grew desperate, watching their fleets fall with growing horror. They had ruled the galaxy for centuries, and now they were losing ground faster than they could comprehend. Captain Vasquez and her crew moved like shadows through the chaos, never pausing, never retreating. The battle raged on for days, with star systems changing, hands and entire fleets destroyed. Despite the overwhelming odds and the massive size of the Galdran forces, humanity's spirit did not break. They fought not just with weapons, but with the will to survive and protect everything they had built. In the darkness of space, amid the flashing explosions and burning wrecks, the legend of the human warships began to grow. Ships once called primitive were now the deadliest in the galaxy. And through it all, the Requital and its captain led the charge, a symbol of humanity's determination to never bow down. The war had only just begun, but one thing was clear. The Galdran Alliance had underestimated the humans, and that mistake would cost them everything. Admiral Takar Ven stood on the command deck of Velsha Fortress, the largest Galdran stronghold in the Outer Rim. His eyes were sharp and cold as he watched the holographic display of the battle unfolding across multiple star systems. Around him, officers scrambled to relay reports and adjust defenses, but the grim truth was clear. The humans were overwhelming them. Ships fell one after another, their metal hulls shattered by precision strikes and relentless attacks. The Galdran, fleets once proud and unbeatable, were breaking apart faster than anyone could have imagined. Ven's mind raced as he tried to understand how Earth had built such power in secret. Their technology was unlike anything the Galdrans had seen before. Their weapons cut through shields like knives through cloth, and their ships moved with speed and grace that made traditional Galdran tactics useless. Ven called over his aide, a young officer who looked more nervous by the minute. "What is this sorcery? How have the humans hidden this fleet for so long?" The aide swallowed hard before answering. "Sir, our intelligence suggests that Earth spent decades developing advanced warships and artificial intelligence away from the eyes of the galaxy. Their fleets were kept underground, protected from any spy transmissions. They prepared quietly, waiting for the right moment." The Admiral clenched his fists in frustration. "They played a long game then. While we laughed at their warnings, they built the hammer to crush us." Ven turned his attention back to the display. The Galdran Alliance's best chance to stop the Terran advance lay in their secret weapon, the Eclipse Armada. This fleet was their pride. Fast, heavily armed, and almost impossible to detect. It guarded the heart of the Galdran Empire and was their final line of defense. Ven sent the order to summon the Eclipse Armada immediately. He hoped that if they could bring this fleet to bear quickly enough, they might still turn the tide of war. But fate had other plans. As the Eclipse Armada left its hidden base, it was ambushed in a sudden strike by a squadron of Terran stealth ships. The Galdran commanders were caught off guard, unable to mount an effective defense. In minutes, the pride of the Galdran fleet was in flames, drifting silently through space with no survivors. When the news reached Velsha, panic set in. The loss was a devastating blow to morale and strategy. Ven realized the humans had done more than just fight. They had crippled the core of Galdran power before the war had fully begun. Fear spread among the remaining commanders. Many began to question their leadership, and whispers of surrender started to rise. But Ven refused to give up. He ordered all remaining forces to regroup and prepare for a final stand. The battle lines were shifting, fast, and the humans pressed their advantage relentlessly. Planets fell, colonies were lost, and once mighty Galdran fleets scattered. It was clear. The old order was collapsing, and in the shadows of defeat the humans showed no mercy. Their warships struck again and again, relentless as a storm sweeping through the stars. The galaxy that had once belonged to the Galdran Alliance was slipping away. The humans had arrived, and the fight for survival was only just beginning. The stars flickered coldly outside the bridge of the HSS Requital as Captain Elena Vasquez stared at the growing battlefield map glowing before her. The Galdran Empire was crumbling under the relentless push of humanity's forces, yet the fiercest battles were still ahead. Elena's crew moved with precise coordination, their hands steady despite the tension hanging thick in the air. After the destruction of the Eclipse Armada, the Galdrans became desperate. They launched wave after wave of fighters, drones, and bombers, hoping to overwhelm the Terran fleet with sheer numbers. The Requital and its sister ships faced swarms of enemies, their plasma turrets blazing a deadly dance of light and sound. Elena's voice cut through the chaos, issuing orders that turned chaos into strategy. They fought in tight formations, weaving through enemy fire with daring maneuvers only human pilots dared attempt. Each time a Galdran ship exploded, cheers echoed through the bridge, but there was no time to celebrate. The battle was far from over. Deep within the command center, Elena's second-in-command, Lieutenant Mira Chen, worked furiously to keep the ship's systems online. Energy shields flickered under heavy fire, and sensors warned of incoming missiles locked onto their position. Mira's fingers danced across the controls, rerouting power and activating countermeasures just in time to save the Requital from destruction. Meanwhile, beyond the bridge, space was alive with destruction and beauty. Star cruisers twisted through fields of debris, their engines glowing bright against the black. Explosions blossomed like deadly fireworks, painting the void with orange and blue flames. Elena knew that every victory came with a price. Thousands of brave Terran pilots and crews had been lost in these fights. Families across Earth waited anxiously, hoping their loved ones would return. But there was no turning back. This war was bigger than any one person. As the Requital pressed forward, it entered orbit above Kythera Prime, now a shattered world. The city lights were dimmed, the surface scarred by bombardments and ground assaults. Elena's mission was clear: destroy the last Galdran command center and end the war once and for all. But the Galdrans were not ready to surrender. Hidden beneath the ruins, they launched fierce counterattacks with ground forces and orbital weapons, striking with desperation and rage. The Requital took heavy damage, but Elena refused to retreat. She remembered the faces of her crew, the hopes of humanity resting on their shoulders. With one final surge of power, the warship unleashed a barrage of missiles and plasma beams, tearing through the enemy's last defenses. The command center exploded in a blinding fireball, its control systems destroyed. Silence spread across the battlefield. The Galdran forces faltered, their morale broken. Elena's crew cheered quietly, knowing their victory was won but feeling the weight of loss. As the stars steadied once more, Captain Vasquez looked out at the horizon, knowing this was just the beginning of a new era. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. They had warned the universe, and now nothing could stop the human warships. The silence after the final blast was heavy, but the battle was far from over. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the HSS Requital, her eyes scanning the vast blackness outside, where the wreckage of the shattered Galdran fleets floated, like fallen giants. Though the command center on Kythera Prime was destroyed, whispers of resistance still echoed in the dark corners of the galaxy. The humans knew that enemies would not surrender easily. Far from the front lines, fleets regrouped, and secret Galdran commanders planned their next moves. Elena understood the war had entered a new phase, one where cunning and heart would matter as much as firepower. Her crew was tired but resolute. Among them was Lieutenant Mira Chen, whose steady hands and quick thinking had saved the Requital more than once. She worked tirelessly alongside the engineers, patching damage and preparing the ship for what might come next. The scars of battle were visible, scorched bulkheads, flickering consoles, and the low hum of emergency power systems. Yet, the spirit of humanity remained unbroken. Meanwhile, deep within the shadows of a nearby asteroid field, a small Galdran fleet hid. Commander Ilrek, a fierce and calculating leader, watched the human movements through stolen sensor data. His voice was cold as he spoke to his officers. They think this war is over. They believe their warships cannot be stopped. But we have one advantage left: surprise. Ilrek's fleet was smaller and less powerful, but he had something the humans did not expect. A new weapon, an ancient technology rumored to bend the fabric of space itself. The Galdrans called it the Shadow Rift. If unleashed properly, it could tear open a hole in space and swallow entire fleets whole. As the humans repaired and regrouped, unaware of this lurking threat, Ilrek prepared his trap. He sent out false distress signals, baiting the Terran fleets to respond. The humans, driven by their sense of duty and compassion, answered the call without hesitation. The Requital was among the first to arrive at the coordinates, ready to rescue any survivors or aid their allies. As Elena's ship moved closer, the asteroid field around them began to shimmer strangely. Then, without warning, the Shadow Rift opened, a swirling black hole of twisted light and sound. Ships near the rift were pulled in with terrifying force. Terran fighters fought desperately, trying to escape the gravitational pull, but many were lost in the abyss. The Requital shuddered violently as powerful waves of energy hit its shields. Elena barked orders, demanding full power to engines and evasive maneuvers. The ship strained under the assault, but the crew's training and courage shone through. Engineers worked feverishly to stabilize the reactors, while gunners targeted the source of the rift's power. The battle that followed was one of the most intense Elena had ever faced. The humans fought not only against the enemy ships but against the very fabric of space trying to swallow them whole. In the heart of chaos, Elena found strength in her crew's determination. Each pilot, each engineer, each soldier fought with the knowledge that humanity's future depended on their courage and unity. Slowly, the Requital and its escorts pushed back. With a coordinated strike, they destroyed the core device powering the Shadow Rift. The swirling maelstrom collapsed, and the remaining Galdran ships were caught off guard. The Terran fleet pressed the advantage, capturing or destroying the enemy vessels before they could retreat. As silence returned, Elena allowed herself a moment to breathe. The cost had been high. Many ships and lives were lost. But humanity had survived the deadliest trap yet. The victory was bittersweet, a reminder that no matter how powerful the warships, war demanded sacrifice. With the Shadow Rift destroyed and the enemy scattered, the humans prepared to push deeper into Galdran space. Their fight was far from over, but their spirit burned brighter than ever. Elena knew that the galaxy would never forget the moment. The human warships faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The final battle was near, and the tension on the bridge of the HSS Requital was thick like a storm about to break. Captain Elena Vasquez stood firm, her gaze steady on the holographic map showing the last stronghold of the Galdran Empire, the Yao, fortress world of Dravos Prime. This was where the enemy's remaining forces gathered, desperate and dangerous, ready to fight for their survival or to die trying. The human fleet moved in formation, massive warships cutting through the darkness of space, their engines glowing bright against the black. The air on the Requital was charged with determination and quiet fear. Everyone knew what was at stake: the fate of humanity's future and the hope of peace in the galaxy. Elena's voice was calm but powerful as she addressed her crew. She reminded them that they had already faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Now, all their strength and courage would be tested once more. The battle began with a roar as both sides unleashed their full power. Lasers cut through space like silver threads and explosions bloomed against distant stars. The Galdran warships fought fiercely, using every tactic they had left to try and hold their ground. But the humans had learned from every fight, growing, stronger and more united with each victory. Elena's warship dove into the thick of the fight, dodging enemy fire and delivering powerful strikes with its advanced weaponry. Around her, The crew worked like a well-oiled machine, each person focused on their role but ready to help wherever needed. Lieutenant Mira Chen's steady hands kept the ship's systems running smoothly, even under heavy attack. Outside, smaller, fighter squads zipped through enemy lines, targeting vulnerable points and protecting the larger ships. The battle was brutal, with losses on both sides. Yet, amidst the chaos, moments of heroism shone bright. A young pilot risked everything to save a damaged ally, flying through a storm of missiles to draw fire away. Engineers patched up critical damage in record time, their faces streaked with sweat but determined to keep the requital fighting. Elena felt a fierce pride for her crew and all the humans who had stood firm against the darkness. As the fight reached its peak, the Galdron flagship appeared, massive and heavily armed, a symbol of the old Empire's last hope. Elena knew that if this ship fell, so would their entire resistance. With a deep breath, she gave the order to focus all firepower on the flagship. The human fleet unleashed a devastating barrage, striking with precision and power. The Galdron flagship fought back, firing back with deadly beams and missiles that tore through space. The battle between the two ships was like a clash of titans, shaking the very stars around them. Finally, after a long and grueling fight, the flagship exploded in a blinding fireball, its destruction signaling the end of Galdron resistance. The remaining enemy ships scattered, their will broken. Silence settled over the battlefield like a soft blanket. Elena's crew cheered quietly, knowing the war was won, but also feeling the weight of sacrifice and loss. The galaxy had changed, forever. Captain Vasquez looked out at the stars, knowing humanity had proven its strength, its courage, and its unbreakable spirit. The human warships had shown the universe that they could not be stopped. But more than victory, this was a promise that, no matter the darkness ahead, humanity would stand tall and fight for the future they believed in.